Everyone, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kiran Murthy, Vice President, Enterprise Account, Accorian. I'm excited to welcome you to this session hosted by Accorian, where we help organizations move from reactive cybersecurity posture to a truly proactive one. We'll walk you through the transformation from traditional TPRM method to a future-ready proactive approach, covering real-world examples. In today's session, we have the speakers Om Hazela, Vice President, CISO, and Head of General Compliance, leading global compliance initiative across industries. Myself, Kiran Murthy, specialized in securing large-scale enterprises and strategic cybersecurity program. We also have Vigneshwar Ravi, Director and Principal Consultant, expert in TPRM and risk management projects. Today's focus is on transformation your third-party risk management or TPRM practice to meet today's evolving security landscape. We'll talk about real challenges, proven strategies, and the practical steps organizations that are taking to protect themselves against a third-party risk. Our session will not just be theoretical. We'll share actionable insight that you can apply immediately to enhance resilience, compliance, and overall business security. Throughout the presentation, if you do have any questions or if you have any concern, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll be able to get them soon. Moving next, who's Accorian? A quick introduction to who are we. Accorian is established cybersecurity advisory firm that serves a global clientele. We help business of all sizes strengthen their security posture through three main pillars we have. Security strategy and consulting service, from vCISO program to risk assessment, cloud security reviews, and helping companies build long-term security roadmaps. Compliance and services, we do the risk assessment. We do also conduct the certification across major frameworks like HITRIST, SOC 2, PCI, ISO standard, and more. Penetration testing, covering internal and external network, application, cloud API, and social engineering exercise like phishing simulations. In short, whether you're building security maturity from scratch or preparing for regulatory audits, Accorian has been the trusted partners for hundreds of organizations worldwide. So now let's get into our today's topic, third-party risk management. Now let's set the foundation. What exactly is third-party risk management and why it is more crucial than ever? TPRM, in short, is a systematic process of identifying, assessing, mitigating, and monitoring the risk associated with the third party. It covers the entire life cycle of the relationship, from onboarding to ongoing monitoring to offboarding as well. In today's hyper-connected world, the effective TPRM is no longer optional. It's a cornerstone for delivery standpoint. So now let's look at the three important pillars what we have when it comes to third-party risk management. Business resilience, security, compliance, and regulatory requirements. Why these three considered as one of the three pillars? Imagine if any of your vendor or any third party weaken their security and that can introduce a serious and vulnerability into your system. And if you look at the third party failure, that can disrupt supply chain, operations, and customer delivery as well. Compliance and regulatory requirements such as standard ISO 27001, SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR mandates organization to actively manage third party risk. With that context in mind, let's dive deeper into how leading organizations are transforming their TPR program and how you can do the same as well. Now, before we move ahead, there's a lot of confusions or a lot of common challenge we often see in the industry with the different terms and jargons when we discuss third-party risk. Terms like TPRM, third-party risk management, VRM, vendor risk management, TPCRM, third-party cyber risk management, and supply chain risk management are frequently used as interchangeable. Sometimes it's very confusing, should I have to say it's a VRM or TPRM? What should I consider it? So most of the organization are confused with this and which one to proceed as well. To give you more highlight about this, I would like to hand over to Om to give more light on this. Om, if you could explain, because most of the common challenge is the terminologies, whether I have to say TPRM or vendor risk management. Over to you, Om.
Right. Thanks, Kiran. So, like Kiran has already brought up, there is a lot of confusion when you use these terms interchangeably. Okay, though they are interconnected, but it is very important to understand the nuances of these terms, because if you see the risk focus for all these terms are totally different. Okay, so let's start with the TPRM. So think of managing a risk from outside companies, okay, which are having a different levels of attention to potential issues. So TPRM is like it's a biggest umbrella. Okay, it covers all possible risks that can come from any external entities. So those entities could be whether they are partners, they are vendors, contractors, you name it, right? That is TPRM. Now, within this big umbrella, you will have the VRM. VRM is the vendor risk management. Think of this like as a zooming in into the specific risk that come from the companies that provide you the service, actual service, right? Those are your vendors. The third one is the TPCRM, which is a third party cyber risk management. So think like this, it is putting a spatial cybersecurity goggles where it can specifically looks at the cybersecurity risk. Okay. So particularly these vendors, when they might introduce to your systems and data and create another risk, which is the cybersecurity risk. Finally, we have the SCRM, which is the supply chain risk management. Okay, so this is like looking at the entire journey. Okay, so how you get things, you need to run your business, involving both internal parties, external parties. Okay, and that if the chain is break, that became unstable and it is not secure. Okay, let's take an example. If you take an example of a CSPs, maybe cloud service provider. So when we talk about the TPRM in the big umbrella for the CSPs, it is TPRM is the overall risk assessment. So we are not checking only just security. Okay, we are also worried about the other risk factors like the vendor could go out of the business. There might be the system services might be down, or it might go something that hurts your operation, reputations. Okay, so we consider all sorts of risk in the TPRM, wherein VRM you focus on the particular service, like it focus on how well the CSP actually delivers their cloud services. So are they reliable? Are they meeting the speed and uptime promises? And are they mentioned everything in the contract, like they're following those contract terms? So these are the important thing when we think about the VRM and focus on the service. And in the case of CSPs, when we talk about the TPCRM, we check and see the cybersecurity risk. So since our data is there, so we need to check that is their security strong, could your data be vulnerable because of they manage their systems, those kind of issues, right? That is TPCRM. And the SCRM is looks for the stability and security of everything that make the CSP service possible. So you take an example of a data center, the internet providers, even the companies, they own it. Okay, so any chain break in that became became it insecure, and it could affect your access to your cloud services. So these are the terms. I think it is very important to understand, and then you can differentiate where to go and where to focus on the risk side. Other than that, there are a couple of more terms I want to talk about, like vendor due diligence, TPRM ingress, and TPRM ingress. So if you see any standard, whether it's ISO, PCI, they talk about the due diligence. Whether when you onboard any vendor, there has to be a due diligence to be done. Okay, if you don't do, it might be a big risk. So carefully checking out potential partners for risk before and during the relationship. So that is a vendor due diligence. When we talk about the TPRM ingress, it is a process of bringing new outside companies on board. So what do? You check the risk, you check the agreements, whether contracts are in place, what level of access you are giving. That is your TPRM ingress. And the TPRM egress is you're ending the relationship, like you're offboarding the vendor. In case you have to remove the access, you have to check whatever data they were using, how are they managed, sanitization is done or not, those kind of issues, and check all the details. So these are the terms we should understand before we get into the other details.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Om, for giving the clarity. I think this is one of the most confusion around the industry, and thank you so much for clarifying it. Now, moving ahead, on the key trends in data breach, Om, if you can throw a light on this, please.
Sure. Correct. Okay. So given that the data breaches are increasingly exploiting weakness in a third-party ecosystem, so let's dive into the key trends shaping the TPRM. So the first and foremost trend which we are seeing these days is a significant increase in frequency and impact of third-party breaches. So I was going through one of the report where the percentage of breaches where a third party was involved, it doubled year on year. So it was 15% last year, it became 30%. It is almost doubled, right? That is one.
Yeah.
The another factor is on the sector side. So healthcare sector. So these days, if you go back and see which sector is most affected. So that would be healthcare sector definitely. And next one is fintech, of course. So in one of the report, I was shocked to see the 41.2% of all third-party breaches in 2024, they affected the healthcare organizations. That was the figure. Okay. The another trend we are seeing these days is ransomware, which is very common. So ransomware groups are actively targeting third-party vendors. So this is a very interesting thing. So attackers, they understand if you disrupt a one critical supplier, that can cripple and change and disrupt any primary targets. So that is why ransomware is another trend and the attackers are using. The next one is the supply chain attack, which target the software vulnerabilities. So what happens? So in case of any software or the application or any technology which required in supply chain, that remains a highly effective tactic for any threat actors. Okay, so what exactly they do? It allows them to affect multiple organizations, because if you find one vulnerability and you exploit that vulnerability in that particular application, and that application is being used by multiple organizations, so you have targeted multiple organizations, right? So that kind of a attack and the trends are seeing in the TPRM. The next one, of course, the CSPs. If you see any organization, they all are going for the cloud services, and there is the impact on data because they manage the massive data storage. So they became the key targets for the TPRM efforts. Okay. Another one is the third party weak authentication. These are also very easy entry points for any attackers, and they are targeting the organizations as well. Okay. Now, if I give you the example like on the screen, the ransomware attack in February 2024, it was purely on the health payment processing company, and more than 190 million PHIs were affected. What was the issue? The issue was nothing. There was a lack of MFA. There was no MFA, and the incident caused a massive disruption in healthcare system. Okay. The another instance we could see in the past where the business service company and that compromised the device of a partner. Okay. In that case, more than 4.3 million individuals PHI were affected. So these are the things. So health sector, the ransomware and lack of the MFA was one of the issue here. So if you imagine a scenario where your vendors are not just potential risk, okay, but active contributors to your security posture. That's the power of a proactive TPRM program, and that is why it transforms from liabilities to the security partnerships.
Wow, that's great, Tom. Looking at the trends, healthcare sector remains a major target still, so that's very scary, and we need to focus on that. And
Absolutely.
but yes, of course, ransomware is still dominance, and we could see latest is the AI attacks as well. That's also been very scary and surprising as well. That it's also
Yeah.
lead when it comes to the trend as well. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much, Om. And audience side, Om, just a minute. There is a one question from the audience side.
Sure.
Let me roll out for you. What role do third-party vendors play in data breach?
Oh, okay. So So third-party vendors, they can become unintended gateways for cyber criminals. So if the security controls are weaker than those of the primary organization, so like I gave you the example of the Citrix portal where that lacked MFA in 2024 case. So they could breach that system because there was no MFA. So definitely, the third-party vendors can play a major role when it comes to the data breaches.
Oh yeah, that's great insight. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So let's move ahead with respect to why traditional TPRM falls short. In other words, what are the common pitfalls? This is because of the evolving risk, and it also demands smarter real-time strategy as well. To walk us through these challenges and how organization can overcome them, I would like to invite Wiggy, our TPRM expert. So it's all yours, Wiggy. So let's know why the common pitfall as well, please.
Hey, thanks, Kiran. Thanks, Om. All right. So now that we have a foundational understanding of what TPRM is and what are the common methodologies and what are the key trends, right? Let's address one of the next crucial questions. Why do traditional TPRM approaches often fail to provide a robust security and a resilience that the organizations currently need in today's complex, evolving environment? Right. So this slide outlines five key areas or five crucial things where the traditional methods fall short. Right. So if the pitfall one, if you see the illusion of security through static assessments, right? The first major weakness is static and infrequent assessments. So we all know that the traditional TPRM often relies on periodic questionnaires and annual audits and getting responses and reports on an annual basis, right? However, in our current rapidly evolving digital cybersecurity landscape, a snapshot from back in time quickly becomes irrelevant or outdated. Right. So an audit assessment offers a false sense of security, providing limited visibility into what threats and what might ultimately become vulnerabilities, right? Which tends to become more of a complex exercise, a checkbox tick, rather than a source of actionable risk intelligence, right? It's like, for example, you're driving forward, but you're looking in the rear view mirror instead of looking in your front mirror, right? Something like that. So that's the first one. And the second one is basically the vendor visibility, right? So this is a common trait across all major organizations where uh, if you don't know our lens on a third parties, right? Let's say we don't have an accurate or comprehensive inventory of vendors and what relationship we have with them, understanding the criticality. So this will actually increase the challenge of doing a proper TPRM, right? If you don't have a clear picture of our vendor ecosystem, how can we then effectively manage the associated risks, right? So this lack of visibility directly correlates to something called hindering our real-time monitoring. So it is like we don't know who our vendors are, what is their criticality, what is their reliance, and thereby we won't know where to focus and what to monitor, right? That's the third pitfall. So traditional TPRM offer lacks of continuous monitoring capabilities needed to detect and respond to risks as they emerge in the current landscape, right? And waiting for the next annual risk assessment, right, is simply too late because in many cases some of the vulnerabilities are exploited before that, which potentially jeopardize our system security and operational performance, right? And pitfall four, if you see, this is basically reactive stance on the emerging risks, right? Insufficient focus. So the threat landscape, as you all know, is a constant flux wherein the new vulnerabilities and attack techniques are constantly being introduced on daily basis, right? And traditional approaches often rooted in established frameworks and historical data struggle to adapt quickly and evolve through these novel threats. This reactive stance, ready for instance to occur or for a new regulation to emerge, leaves us vulnerable. So we need to shift towards a more proactive approach that incorporates, takes in feed of the threat intelligence and threat sources what we have, and thus anticipating the future risks. Right. So, and the last one, if you see, this is most the dangerous one, which is nothing but the resource allocation challenges. Right. See, the effectiveness of any TPRM program, right, is heavily dependent on resources and resource allocation, right? Organizations often struggle to dedicate sufficient personnel, budget, technology, right, to manage their TPRM program. So this underinvestment directly impacts our ability to implement robust assessments and maintain visibility and conduct continuous monitoring, right? Because often these are seen like a compliance exercise rather than a mandatory thing. So the ultimate outcome of these all shortcomings, what I just said, organizations operate with a false sense of security and confidence, but where in reality they are often blind to the critical vulnerabilities, which can lead to costly data breaches. Like as Om had mentioned, if there are health records breached, then there's a penal thing associated to it as well, right? And it also leads to incidents, breaches, and compliance failures. Recognizing these pitfalls is the first key step in adopting towards a more reliant and effective TPRM strategy.
Perfect. Wow, it looks very interesting. And one of the common questions when it comes to lack of real-time monitoring, most of them they were asking me that how should or how often we should review the vendors. And to answer that one, I would always suggest at least annually or based on the risk tier. So it depends on the organization to organization. So, in simple terms, I would suggest at least annually you have to review your vendors. So, moving to next slide about the design and implementing an effective TPR program. So, Vicky, can you explain the design, how we can take it forward?
Sure. So now that we have seen the common pitfalls and where all we pass and fail, so building on these shortcomings and overcoming that, let's just see how to design and implement an effective TPRM program, a high-level walkthrough, right, which are covered in five critical phases, right? The phase one is about vendor discovery and onboarding, right? So this is the first critical phase wherein the entire process begins. So then it involves initial identification of third-party vendors whom our organization interacts with. This actually goes beyond just the large providers like AWS, GCP. It should include everyone who has access to our data, access to our systems, can impact our business operations in any way, right? So critically, this is the phase which also has a systematic collection of their key information, like what service they provide, what is the impact if they are not there, the initial understanding of what data they can handle if they are breached, what impact they're going to have, what system do they have access to, right? So here, the first step is basically to have a thorough and accurate inventory of our vendors, right? Which is very fundamental, right? Because if we don't know who our vendors are, we can't manage their risk effectively, right? That's the first phase. And second phase, vendor categorization. So as Kiran just answered the last question, depends on vendor category. This is nothing but we classify vendors based on their criticality, right? That's called vendor categorization. See, not all third parties pose the same level of risk, right? For example, a janitorial services who provides administration services to a company is not as important as our cloud service provider, right? Or as our security partner, right? So vendors are classified and categorized according to their criticality level, right? This is basically determined by a series of responses to different key parameters, right? Factors like what services they provide, what sensitive data they handle, and what access do they have to critical systems. So these all combine together, including factors like regulatory inputs, replaceability. So all these combined, these parameters would help us effectively categorize our vendors into low, medium, high, and critical, right? Why we are doing this? Because this ensures a more efficient and impactful allocation of TPRM resources to the vendors accordingly, right? And the phase three is nothing but your assessment and evaluation, right? So once you have identified the vendors, you categorize the vendors, the next key thing is to do an assessment and evaluation, right? This is where you actually delve deeper into understanding the security posture of your vendors, right? This phase typically involves in assessing and evaluating the controls through various methods like security questionnaire assessments, reviewing their certifications, going through their penetration reports, going through vulnerability scans, or other security policies and process what they have, right? So the goal here is to gain a very clear understanding of a vendor's security practices and security posture, and foresee or identify any vulnerabilities or red flags that could impact your organization as well, right? And the depth and frequency of these assessments should be directly aligned to the vendor criticality determined in the previous phase, right? Coming to the phase four. So once we review everything, once we understand everything, the next phase, it is not like one has done the assessment and annihilation, okay, take pass mark. No. So basically, the penultimate phase is this phase where the reporting and dashboard. So the insights gained from these assessments and evaluation phases, right, need to be effectively communicated and visualized, right? So this phase involves reporting, right? Which involves vendor overall security posture or a score or risk ratings or status. And presenting this information to your business owners, your management is a very mandatory thing, right? Crucially, this phase also includes for us to plan what are the follow-up actions we need to have. Is the vendor safe or not? Can I go ahead and continue my business with this vendor? Right. That's a decide. This is the deciding phase, right? And also, the identified vulnerability should be communicated to the vendors as well, right? Phase five, monitoring and follow up, right? Finally, TPRM, as we mentioned, is not a one-time activity. It's always an ongoing process, right? So the monitoring and follow-up phase emphasizes the need for continuous vigilance, right? This involves actively monitoring the vendor compliance with our requirements, SLAs, contracts, information security requirements, everything together, right? And review of ongoing reports. Let's say an example that penetration report of a customer says they had a higher critical finding when you had done the assessment, and their plan or response to you was that they're going to remediate it within 15 days or 10 working days, whatever the time frame they define, right? So we'll have to make sure that we go back and ask for a rescan report just to ensure the vulnerability is mitigated or not, right? So this continuous monitoring loop ensures that you maintain an up-to-date understanding of your third-party landscape and can proactively respond to any emerging issues, right? So this iterative approach is the key to building a truly effective and resilient TPRM program.
Hey, thank you so much, Vignesh. I was just answering one of the question from the audience. Uh, Let me take that up. What are the five main components to check while doing the TPRM audit? As you see, we already explained, with respect to categorization, to firstly do the segmentation of the vendor or categorization based on the risk level. Once you classify based on the, what kind of, they were handling the information, whether it's a sensitive information or it's any kind of regular supports information. That is what you have to make sure you need to check on that. And also conduct, you also need to check, whether they are doing the risk assessment or do look at the documentation standpoint. What kind of documentation is there pertaining to handling the documentation standpoint? And online, either ongoing reviews should be conducted on the regular interval of times. These are the main stuff, and if you look at the implementation standpoint, you need to give based on the risk and the business impact standpoint. You need to look at what exactly the impact going to happen. That's about it. Vicky, thank you so much for giving the clarity on the design and implementation. And we will come back to your question, Purushottam, is again. So, as we need to cover some more slides, at last we're going to take it up right now. Moving next, uh, Vicky, if you can give us some insight, small to large, you can even answer one of the audience question pertaining to what they have to consider for the audit standpoint. Yeah, please go
Sure.
ahead.
So there are basically six key TPRM elements, which I want to say is very important when building a TPRM strategy. If you see the first year listed down here, resource allocation, risk assessment approach, and technology, right? Again, as Kiran, you mentioned, these are just insights. It's going to act as a guide to the company. It is not mandatory that we have to follow skeleton. It's always good to start small and go big rather than starting big and failing at that, right? So if you see small to medium large scale companies, right? So the main differences here would be budget, resources, revenue, right? For example, as I said, the budget on resources and tools would heavily be reliant on how much money we can shell out, right? So we can do the same effective assessment through a manual Excel as well as a high scale, an AI automated GRC tool, right? So if you see the resource allocation, right? So for small companies, you can go with a dedicated part-time role. For medium scale companies, dedicated TPRM team, 2 to 5 people should be there. For large companies, a separate dedicated TPRM department should be there, right? And on the disbursement approach, right? For the small scale companies, it is mandatory for the first step to go with the critical vendors, right? And then for the medium scale, it is based on different criticality. Can have different questionnaires focusing on their main business impactful vendors, right? And for large scale companies, as I said, classify all your vendors into low, medium, high, and critical. Based on each criticality level, do the assessments which seems fit according to your organization's needs, right? On the technology, as I said, A simple spreadsheet can also work, or a basic GIS tool will also work, right? Depending on the company's budget and resource crunch, they can always decide either to go with a tool which will minimize your need of resources, right? Or we can use a spreadsheet tracking utilizing the current people tools what we have, right? But I would suggest for medium and large scale companies to go with the TPRM software, which can actually act as a centralized point of repository and which can automate your workflows and make sure that we have everything what we need in a single point of view, right? Kiran, if you can move to the next one, please.
Sure.
So the next important element is governance structure, right? So if you see small companies won't have a major hierarchy being followed, unlike the large and medium scale companies, right? So we'll have to have one single point of contact who would be the authority for this, right? Simple policy procedures, ad hoc decision making, checking your certifications on your companies, right? For medium and large scale, I would say you'll have to have a governance committee, right? With regular meetings going on, with your standardized policies and process and workflows, right? And also we have to have a comprehensive framework defined of how we're going to do it and what we're going to do, right? Next, we see the proactive measures. I think that the small companies basically focuses on the contractual protections, the basic security requirements, what they have signed up, the right to audit clause and stuff, right? The medium scale companies can go one step above and ask for their certifications like ISO, SOC, high trust, right, which was relevant, right? And then we can see how we can improve their vendors by telling them that, hey, you know what, you'll have to go and get a SOC certificate, or can you do and do a external facing web application pen test, right? And the large scale companies should have much more latest assessments like your attack surface scans, red team exercise, configuration reviews, right, and other control validation like brand monitoring, right, which in depth will find out the gaps or vulnerabilities which our vendor has, which is not only aligned to our technological but also in a whole breach point of view. Right. And the final one is reporting and metrics, right? As I said, this is one of the key steps which will ensure that we capture the right data and we present it to the right people, and also we do a follow-up, right? So for a small scale companies, right, we can always have a manual status reporting where we have prioritized things what we need our vendors to have, right? But for medium scale companies, I would prefer to have a proper automated dashboards, quarterly reporting to your management and performance metrics, tracking, which is also being shown to your management vendor committee as well, right? Large scale companies, we should do an additional thing called predictive risk analysis, right? Which is nothing but not only the risks what we see as red flags, but also we should predict in case what might pop up in the near future, right? That's your difference between these three scale of companies. Any questions for anyone?
Yeah, I've been answering a few questions. There's one more question, Vicky. For a medium-sized company, what's a primary benefit of moving from manual tracking to dedicated TPRM software?
Great, that's a great question. So switching to a dedicated TPRM software, particularly a medium-sized company, gives them a possible thing called centralized data management, right? Replacing scattered spreadsheets with to a single platform for all vendor information, right? This also enables one more important thing, which is workflow automation, streamlining tasks like assessments, follow-ups, which usually saves a lot of time and reducing manual errors and human intervention. Consequently, companies gain a more holistic view of the third-party risk in a single point of view, and also can allocate resources more effectively for analysis and mitigation.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Vicky. That's a great insight, especially on exploring the governance structure, proactive measures. And moving next slide, let's look at the strategy standpoint. Strategies are the most important one. We have implemented, Vicky, based on your approach, the structure and everything. Now, once implemented, how can we keep the TPRM program robust and continuous? And Om, can you explain the strategies that how an organization should go forward?
Yeah, sure, Karan. Thanks. So, if an organization wants to go for a robust TPRM, so these are the few strategies which they can follow. So, let's start with the identify phase, where the first and foremost the organization should create a comprehensive list of all third-party entities. So if your organization interacts with, so those inventory has to be created, and the inventory should be such that it should also mention about the level of access they have to your data, what level of integration is there with the at the system level, and what is the impact and the failure in case they go out of the business. So create an inventory first. That is first thing. The second thing, to classify these vendors or third parties based on the inherent risk they pose, right? So that can be categorized in terms of the critical, high, medium, and low. So how do you decide? How do you categorize? So obviously, the based on the few factors. Those factors are nothing but the kind of data they handle, the kind of operations they are critical to your operations, and also the potential impact they pose on the security breach. Okay. Once you categorize inventory, categorize, and then you map the potential threats. For example, if there is a cloud service provider, right? So cloud service provider might primarily pose a data breach links, while a logistic vendor might present a supply chain disruption risk. So you have to map the category with the potential threat and identify these vendors. Once you identify, then you have to measure their process. So that can be done by any way. So you can create a structured questionnaire based on SIG or CIAQ, which is the Consensus Assessment Initiative questionnaire. And once you have that structured way to gather information about their controls and processes, the next step is to validate those documentation. Okay, so review their procedure, review their policies, check their certifications, and also the most important, check the technical implementation of controls just to verify whether their controls are effective or not. Okay, so you already created assessment, the questionnaires, you already verified the documentation, you check the control effectiveness, then you give a score. Okay, so once you give the score is basically, it will depend on the vendor's criticality. Okay, and to your business. That's one. Secondly, what all vulnerabilities are identified in the system and process based on the scrutiny which you did in the previous step, and also the potential impact, like there could be a financial impact, reputational impact, organizational impact, or any. If the risk materializes, what will be the impact in your system? So those kind of based on those criticality and the vulnerability, we should give the risk score. Once that is done, then we have to go for the monitoring phase. So in that, I would recommend that we should have a key risk indicators. So the key risk indicators are nothing but they are the metrics that can signal a potential problems or changes. So suppose you onboard a vendor. Okay, once you onboard a vendor and you give a risk profile, after certain amount of time, the risk profile changed due to what? Due to those KRIs, like some security incident happened, some financial instability, or maybe some negative news. So the risk score of that particular vendors goes up. Okay, the now risk is high. In that case, how do you identify that? For that, the organization should continue do the audits and the reassessments. Okay, based on the criticality of the vendor. In case you have a category of low, medium, or high critical vendor, obviously for the critical and high risk vendors, that will require more frequent and rigorous reviews in comparison to the lower risk ones, right? Another important thing I want to highlight here is once you have the critical infrastructure, suppose you have gone for the vendor who's providing you a critical service and you are totally dependent on that critical infrastructure. In that case, I would recommend that real-time monitoring of their infrastructure can give you the early warnings for any potential issues or any security incidents. So continuous monitoring is the key when you go for the critical infrastructure vendor. Okay. The last step is to now we based on the vulnerabilities or the risk we identified in the previous assessments and the monitoring phase, there has to be clear process and responsibility, like how are they going to remediate. Those have been already given. So this includes what is the defined timelines, how is the tracking process, how are they verifying the effectiveness of those fixes. That is one. Second, they should also have the incident response team and the plan in place so that it ensures a coordinated and effective response plan in case any event occurs. And the most important thing I want to highlight here is the integration of your TPRM program to overall security program. Okay, so TPRM should not be a siloed activity. It has to be integrated with the organization broader security program. For what? For to get a holistic view of overall security posture, and also it will give a senior manager informed decision making so that they can make a decision. Okay, now this is my security posture. I can see my third party vendor. This is the level, and based on that they can make a decision.
Excellent. I'll move to next slide. Yes.
All right. This is an interesting one. So we are very familiar with these days. Everywhere, if you see in the LinkedIn, AI is popping up, right? So AI is a major trend, right? And if you see, many tools now they are leveraging AI for the automation. There has to be a reason. Like, let's see how AI is applied in the TPRM assessment. Okay, so if you can see on the left side of the screen, where these are the steps which one has to follow in case if you are going for the AI and automation for the TPRM assessment. The first and foremost is the streamlining vendor onboarding. So, like what AI can do. So AI it automates your initial steps. Like the once you onboard the vendor, you collect all the documents, you collect all the certificates, policies. So what AI will do? AI will help you to extract the information from the documents, from the those certificates and the policies. For example, uh, suppose you onboard a vendor and you ask for the SOC 2 report, right? For this, in that SOC 2 report, the AI will extract the relevant services, the time frame, and also it will flag any observation or exception related to the any control in the SOC 2, right? That will give you. Once you do that, AI will also help in the analysis of the vendor questionnaire responses. So those questions are there. So automated question will be created. The vendor will answer those questions. So AI can immediately go and check and flag risk in case if there are few questions which are not directly answered. Okay, so AI might give a trigger or suggest a follow-up questions. Okay, and it will also flag a risk in case the answer is there, but that is not meeting the requirement which has to be there. Okay, so this reduces a lot of manual effort, right? Another thing what AI can do, the automated risk assessment. Okay, so AI algorithm, if you see, they will analyze the data sets from the question responses, the financial data from the news feeds, threat intelligence, and they will give you the risk pattern and the anomalies. Okay, and the based on that, it will give the score. Okay, based on the criticality of the vendor and the services which they are providing. For example, in case of CSP, if that is a critical vendor or for you, AI will give you that this is a medium high or the critical vendor based on the services you are going for. Okay. The next one, when AI has all these things in place, then it will give you a reporting or the comprehensive report, the interactive dashboard, where you can see the risk profile, the compliance status, what is the overall program effectiveness. Okay, it gives a clear, actionable insights what a stakeholder should do. Then the next one, what you can do, the continuous monitoring. So AI can also give you the anomaly detection in real time, and also the predictive analytics and the threat intelligence can also be given by the AI. So, and last one is workflow automation. So in case, suppose the documentation is missing or some answers are incomplete, assessments are there. So AI can follow up with that and collaborate with the team and give you the answers. So these are the things. If you come to the roadmap or the outcomes, the most important is the digitization. Then you integrate your AI for document analysis, then continuous monitoring, the same thing which I have just elaborated on the predictive analysis and also the remediation workflows. Once you do that, you will see the difference in the assessment. So it will the faster assessment. You will also reduce the manual effort. The risk visibility will be high, and also the incidents reduction will be there. And the most important is the accuracy of the verification, that is close to a 99.8%. So
Excellent. Thank you so much, Om, for walking us through the AI perspective. Yeah, that's a most important point that most of the organization is going for AI and how to utilize. That's really great insight. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
thanks, Trip.
Now, moving next on the TPRM with the Corico. Corico is our in-house GRC platform with a dedicated TPRM model. Vicky is our expert. So, Vicky, if you can walk us through about how the Gorico can help the organization.
Sure. Thanks, Kiran. So before that, I think one of the hosts has a question. What are the key red flags in TPRM assessments, right? So one of the main red flags in TPRM assessment include like when the vendor is unwilling to share critical information or outdated documentation or poor communication responsiveness. That's one of the main first key red flag, right? Which might be an indicator of financial instability or cybersecurity weakness or history of compliance issues or something operational or cyber terms they're trying to hide something, right? So these signs necessitate few further scrutiny at potential mitigation strategies, right? Hope I answered your question. So moving on. So as Kiran mentioned, so Gorico is our in-house GRC platform, which basically has a dedicated TPRM module, right? So the TPRM module, when I say it provides a complete end-to-end solution for managing third-party risks, moving beyond just the limitations of manual process and offering a more integrated and automated approach, right? Some key features what I want to highlight is basically centralized vendor management, right? Basically, the core capabilities of what we have is that we have a centralized management from right from onboarding to offboarding, both ingress and egress, right? This means you will have a single unified platform to collect, store your essential vendor information, classify them, do assessments, do continuous monitoring, and all the way till eventually offboarding the vendor, right? That's one of the key features. And then I want to talk about vendor classification, right? So when we talk about the vendor criticality, it's very crucial to have a methodology wherein how we classify. So why a methodology is important because it it will omit the human errors and perspective basis, right? For example, Gorico automates this process based on a different methodology, which you can customize as well, right, based on 6 parameters, right? This ensures consistency and accuracy in how vendors are classified according to their criticality, saving time and reducing the potential human error, as I said earlier, right? And the next one is you see the dynamic security assessment questionnaire. As I said, not all vendors should have the same type of questionnaires, right? They should be criticality based or your business impact based. This means that questionnaires sent to the vendors are not static, like one size fits all documents, right? It's not like that. Instead, they dynamically adapt based on vendors' criticality level and business type, right? For example, the high risk vendors will have a more detailed, comprehensive questionnaire, while the lower risk might have a more streamlined assessments. For example, if a vendor says that we have active SOC 2, the vehicle automatically review their SOC 2 and ask questions which are not covered by SOC 2 framework, right? This ensures their assessment efforts are focused where they may matter most, saving time for both the team and the inward team as well, right? And then dashboard visualization, which is very important key factor when it comes to decision, right? So the platform provides intuitive and dynamic dashboards that offer a real-time overview of your current vendor risk landscape, right? So how many of you can say, okay, I know my vendor overall vendor posture score risk score right now, right? When our tool is going to give you that. We also have metrics for each vendor and risk scores like ransom accessibility index, data breach index, right, and other risk scores, which can visually enable us to make decisions properly, right, and also empowering us to quickly identify potential issues and making informed decisions, right. That's on your dashboard. The final thing is the workflow automation, right? For example, when you send out assessments, right, doing reminder email follow-ups, outbound mail communication, reminders, inbound mail communication, completion email, right, or a continuous monitoring follow-up mail, right? So all these communications through mails are automated, right, which ensures there is less human intervention and the vendor is communicated on proper on time, right? Furthermore, Accorian is also integrated with AI, right? Wherein AI is currently leveraged to look at software reports, your penetration testing reports, and other documentations to potentially identify red flags, right? Finally, Gorico provides continuous monitoring and follow-up, wherein all these potentially identified risks and vulnerabilities are categorized based on their criticality, and then we follow up continuously through the tool so that we don't miss out on any monitoring or follow-ups, right? So by leveraging these capabilities, Gorico helps organizations to move beyond from the limitations of a traditional TPRM, right, and establish a more efficient and proactive and ultimately a more secure third-party risk management, right? And one more thing which I want to highlight, when we always say TPRM, right, it's not only about we sending assessments or questionnaires to vendors, right? It's also about we receiving questionnaires from our customers or third parties or vendors or partners, right? So we have another feature called incoming questionnaire response, wherein our AI is basically empowered to integrate with your knowledge base, right? The existing documentation, certifications website, and which will automatically answer your incoming questionnaire, right? You should have a probability score to every question. For example, let's say you get a RFP or a questionnaire, right? And your AI is going to fill that up for you, and it's going to say an accuracy score, and you're just going to review that and then reply it back, right? This saves enormous time in completing RFPs, getting SOPs done, and answering questionnaires on time, right? These are some of the key features in Yuriko, right? Always happy to schedule a demo and walk you through, guys, in more depth.
Hey, that was very insightful. Thank you so much, Vicky, for clarifying on that, Koriko. Before we wrap up, let me quickly share why Accorian for managing the vendor risk. We start by helping you to organize all your vendors based on how much risk they bring. Then our experts like Vicky review the results, adding real world understanding to make sure the risk level are accurate and tailored to your business. This means less work for you and your team, faster assessment, and better use of your resources. We also provide easy to understand reports and dashboards so leadership can make smart decisions quickly. And it doesn't stop there. We also monitor your vendor, update their risk scores, and help you to stay ready for the future. That's what Korean makes a trusted partner. So, moving next, any questions? So, we are running short of time. So, I appreciate all your time, and most importantly, I'm really thankful to each and every one, for such a thoughtful questions. It's great to see such engagement and curiosity in this topic. So, what I would recommend is that feel free to reach out to us if you would like to continue the conversation. I know we have addressed few questions during the sessions, but if you have any more questions, just drop us an email. We'll surely get back to you. We'll also be sharing the presentation deck with you for your reference. And if you're interested, our TPRM methodology is available directly on our website for you to explore. Thank you once again for your time and engagement today. We truly, truly appreciate your interest and looking forward to supporting your third party risk journey. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.